You are not your thoughts. Now, I'm not negating anyone's subjective experience. We're all here experiencing reality as individuals, and some of these experiences are traumatizing, and your feelings are valid. Just because these things do have a very real effect on us, though, does not mean that our thoughts and our attachment to those thoughts, upon reflecting these experiences, aren't creating some sort of cage for us to live in. And I know me personally, as someone who is an overthinker, someone who lives in their head, I tend to take a very useful tool alchemically, which is reflection. Reflecting upon what we've been through is a great way to learn from the past and to reshuffle our own decks and do things differently. But there's such thing as overdoing it, and in overdoing it, we tend to lose ourselves in the stories that we're almost married to. The story of I am the victim, or I am the person that is defined by all of these experiences. And as valid as all of those things are, I do think that true freedom comes from releasing the chains that we are binding ourselves to, the chains that are attached to the weight of our past. And I know that I personally, I like to attach myself to the story of who I am, the story of what I've been through, because it feels so real, and because it's subjective, it feels so important to me, or significant. And to be completely honest, this is why I love things like outer space and astronomy and stuff like that. And not that it, in looking at the macrocosm, that it strips away our significance, but it almost makes our little human lives and the problems and the little conflicts that we have and everything, it seems so small and insignificant in comparison to the whole of it all. And taking that perspective and wrapping it around the whole of just the human experience. Maybe we're going through a difficult relationship, or we're dealing with like a narcissistic partner, or we're dealing with a difficult boss or something like that. 5 years ago or 5 years from now, that experience might not even be relevant. I know that if you go deep enough into the past, before any of that happened, obviously there's a version of you that is unburdened by that. The only reason why I know that someone like me, why I would feel so burdened by what I've been through, is not just because of how real experiences were, but how I choose to carry those experiences with me. Since 2012, I've chosen to carry my experiences by using them as lessons to grow. So I don't view old versions of me as failures, or old relationships as failures. I view them as jumping points to ascend from where I was to who I would become, and ultimately who I am today. And everything is a work in progress. But I think that a big part of this, especially because even back then, all the way up until 2020, I still was a slave to my mind. And as powerful as a tool as the mind is, it's a terrible master if we let it control everything that we do. Because we can't really overthink ourselves out of any situation that we're in. And a lot of times, a lot of people will tell us to, like, you know, you need to take your mind off things, or you need to forget about this person, or, you know, like, just like letting it out somehow, whether it's through physical activity or whether it's through a therapy session. So that way you're not holding on to it. And I think that the idea of holding on to a memory, whether it be good or bad, if we're holding on too tightly to it, it becomes a self-destructive practice. And so what do we do now with the experiences that we've been through, with the memories that we've been burdened by, whether they be good or bad? What do we do now? Because we can reflect, but with that reflection, what do we do with that? We need to take these experiences and use them in a way that propels us forward. Otherwise, I don't think that there's any value in dwelling on anything. And sometimes, because this is not entirely up to us, sometimes we do need to let ourselves fall apart, and we do need to let ourselves fully feel the weight of like a breakup or a death in a family or whatever it may be, some sort of loss. We need to feel the weight of that loss in order to fully release it and alchemize it into something new. But what I'm speaking to specifically is either we haven't let ourselves fully feel that feeling, and so we need to let ourselves feel that, which in a lot of the shadow work that I've talked about earlier, that's what that's all about. Early on in my journey, that's what I was doing specifically. But shadow work, there's so much more to it. So definitely check out that video that I did on shadow work if you're interested in shadow work. But I'm specifically speaking to those of us who have felt the feeling, but now have found ourselves attached to feeling that feeling, because everything that comes after feels so inauthentic and feels so unexciting and almost pointless. So how do we detach ourselves from these toxic thoughts that are robbing us from the reality that is happening around us, just because we think that the significance of this person or this place or this thing was so much more than anything we could experience afterwards? And I think the first thing is to realize there was a you before that thing or that person, and there is a version of you that exists afterwards that is able to use this experience as fuel to fully embody who they are. The details of that lesson and that story is entirely up to you, and it's entirely unique to all of us. So only we truly hold the answers to that. But our minds are servants, not masters. Don't let yourself fall into the trap of overthinking. And it may seem easier said than done, but for someone who does live in their heads a lot, take it from me, once you start to release the identity and the grip that we have on our stories and what we've been through and everything, as soon as we start to release that a little bit and just sink into the moment and where we're at right now, that's when true freedom fully blossoms, and we're able to really access the full potential of the moment that we're in. So with that said, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a good day.